Today's gospel is all about the ways in which different people react to and try to control Jesus. As today's gospel says, Jesus has set his face to go to Jerusalem. Jesus is a man on a mission, and nothing will stand in his way. And Jesus' disciples think that Jesus' journey to Jerusalem will be the culmination of Jesus' authority as the Messiah. Despite what Jesus has told them, the disciples still think that Jesus is going to Jerusalem for glory, for triumph, and to usher in the new reign of the Messiah, God's chosen one. In reality, Jesus goes to Jerusalem to face betrayal, torture, and death on the cross. And nothing can change Jesus' mission. His face is set. He is on his way to Jerusalem, come what may. And so today's gospel reads like a sociology textbook about what different groups of people do when faced with a situation that they cannot change, that they cannot control. Today's gospel records three distinct responses to Jesus' mission, three different attempts to control Jesus and to control the situation. The first response is the village of the Samaritans. The village refuses to receive Jesus, knowing full well where Jesus is going. As today's gospel says, they did not receive Jesus because his face was set towards Jerusalem. Some context is helpful here. While the conflict in Jesus' day between Jews and the Samaritans was very complex, at the heart of it was that while both groups worshipped the same God of Israel, they disagreed about where the best place to worship God was. The Samaritans believed that God should be worshipped on top of Mount Gerizim, whereas the Jews believed that God should be worshipped in the temple in Jerusalem. And this disagreement was made even more fraught after Jewish forces destroyed the Samaritan sanctuary on Mount Gerizim in 128 BC. So in today's gospel, the Samaritan village refuses to welcome Jesus because he is going to Jerusalem, the source of their disagreements about God, and the source also of the destructive pain between two groups of people. When faced with Jesus and his destination, the Samaritan village decides essentially not to face Jesus, refusing in this moment any possibility of reconciliation. It is a classic case of withdrawal, of denial, of refusing to engage, which is, of course, one way of trying to exercise control. The second response to Jesus comes from his own disciples. In response to the Samaritan's rejection, as today's gospel says, James and John react in anger. Lord, they ask Jesus, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them? James and John overreact. Rather than accepting what happens, they want to sweep in, they want to strike out, they want to take over. James and John do this as a way of taking control of the situation, controlling not only the Samaritan village, but also in a way trying to control Jesus' mission itself. They want to turn Jesus' journey to Jerusalem into a triumphant and maybe even violent takeover, rather than submission to the cross. Anger, taking over, overreacting, all are ways of trying to exercise control. And finally, on the way to Jerusalem, Jesus is approached by three people who all wish to follow Jesus, but only on their own terms. Only, it seems, if they can control their environment, making sure that there is a roof over their heads, that they are taken care of, so that Jesus needs to explain to them that foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Or they will follow Jesus only if they can attend to important business first, like burying a loved one or making the appropriate goodbyes to family and friends. And these are all perfectly rational and very important things to do, but these people want to do them on their own terms and in their own time, which is another way of inserting control over their situation. Indeed, also control over Jesus and his mission. Denial, assertive takeover, or on their own terms. All three different ways of trying to gain control. I'm sure each of us can see ourselves in any or all of these reactions. We've all had moments when we try to exert some kind of control over our lives, when our plans for ourselves change unexpectedly, whether we are faced with the trauma, a pandemic, a job loss, the end of a relationship, or some other event that causes us to lose control over our vision for our lives. We tend to react in the same way as the people in today's gospel, either with denial, anger, or trying to change the terms. They're all familiar reactions to the challenges that we face in this life, but when it comes to following Jesus, things are a little different. What Jesus does is important. It is life-changing, and following him is a huge commitment. Jesus has set his face towards Jerusalem. Our choice is whether to follow him or not. All of which begs the question, to what degree do we let following Jesus make a difference in our lives? Put another way, does the grace, mercy, and love of God made incarnate in Jesus eclipse all of our other plans? Does it shape our lives, or do we instead domesticate our faith to fit what feels most comfortable for us? Is our decision to follow Jesus more about the way of love, or is it more about us? I think we know the answer to this question, that faith is meant to transform our lives and to make us wholly new. And yet so often we try to exert control, we try to make a life of faith about our own needs and wants, about our own lives and according to our own requirements. As we can see in today's gospel, Jesus demands that his mission come before our own plans and our own terms, even the ones that seem reasonable. Why? Because Jesus knows that we do not really have control over what happens to us in this life. No matter how much we may deny things or overreact to them or try to change things, no matter how much we try to exert some semblance of control, the truth is that all of our carefully laid plans could come crashing down in a moment, whether by illness, a company cutback, or any number of things. Jesus knows this. We know this too in our heart of hearts, when with all of our attempts at control, disappointing and difficult things still happen to us in this life. Jesus knows, as we do, that control is really an illusion. Now the pious, and I would say simplistically easy answer to all of this would be, well, then if we don't have control, just turn control over to Jesus. Let Jesus take care of it. Let Jesus take away all of the uncertainty in this life. But here's the thing. Jesus has set his face to Jerusalem. And what he will meet there is not glory and order, but instead chaos and uncertainty. Jesus doesn't go to Jerusalem to take over or to take charge or to take the difficult things away. Jesus goes to Jerusalem to thrust himself completely into the suffering and the difficulty of this out-of-control life, and Jesus emerges alongside of us on the other side. So that the promise that we receive at our baptisms, the promise of being a follower of Jesus, the promise of the gospel, is not that we are in control, or even that God is in control. The promise of the gospel is that God in Jesus is with us, alongside of us, in all of the out-of-controlness that we face in this world, and that God in Jesus brings us safely through it to the other side. So rather than trying to exert our own control, rather even than surrendering everything to God's control, let's just give up the illusion of control. And as followers of Jesus,